Alright, welcome back. We are here to talk about the new magic set, The Murders at Karlov Manor. And I would like to take this opportunity to just talk about what are the cards I'm excited to be printed and brew with. Uh, they're sort of presented in the order in my excitement, starting with the least excitement of the ones that made the list. I counted 17, so let's try to do this somewhat expediently. So, surprise! Uh, First new card isn't a new card, it's Disinformation Campaign. So it is a card that has to do with Surveil, and a lot of new cards have Surveil. So there you go. Next card is Lightning Helix. Lightning Helix I have used a lot in Modern, so I am excited that I get to play it in Pioneer and Standard again. Oh boy, 3 damage, gain 3 life. So good. Next card is, stay with me, Slime Against Humanity. This card has probably been talked about to death, so I'm not going to go much into it. If you want to read the card for yourself or go read someone else's article. Alright, Slime Against Humanity. And then we also have Lost in the Maze. So, Lost in the Maze, I'm reading this card, and it's basically sleep, but it has flash. Sleep taps all your opponent's creatures down, and they basically are stunned for a turn. But this card has like a whole bunch of other effects, such as it has flash. You have to pay X, but if you're a janky mid-range deck like I am, usually X equals 2 will get you there. And then your tapped creatures also have hexproof, which is not terrible. So excitement. Next card is Barbed Servitor. What does this card do? 4 mana for a 1/1 indestructible. When it enters the battlefield, you suspect it, so it has menace and can't block. And then whenever deals combat to a player, you can draw a card and lose 1 life. And then whenever damage is dealt to it, your opponent loses that much life. So basically, a 4 mana annoying card that probably no one will play. It does have the Stuffy Doll effect for 1 less mana, so maybe it'll be in a combo deck or someone's pet deck, but it seems like it'll be fun and annoying to play against, but fun for me to play, so that's why it's on the list. What is next after that? Let's go with Incinerator of the Guilty. So a 6/6 trample, flying, ridiculous effect for 6 mana. Uh, Sort of overcosted, but the reason why it's on the list is because I have a dragon deck that I'm trying to make happen in Pioneer. Once Dragon Tempest makes its way to Arena, we can give it a better go. But just because it's a dragon and has such a ridiculous effect, it seems like a card that you would want to include in a dragon deck. Probably won't see much play, but we can dream. Alright, next on the list is Intrude on the Mind. So we have a 5 mana Factor Fiction effect. It costs 5 mana because you also get a creature out of the deal, which is not terrible. Basically, is Factor Fiction because I foresee this going in a deck where you have a card that reduces your instance by 1. There's several creatures that do that. So I feel like this has some potential. Intrude on the Mind. Factor Fiction no longer playable, but maybe this will see some play. Alright, next on the list is Illicit Masquerade, just for shenanigans. What's it do? It has flash. You put an imposter counter on your creatures, and when the imposters die, you exile it and return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. This seems like it could be really nutty, but also you need to have like all the pieces in place for it to work. So I'm probably the only one that's going to build with it. All right. Next on the list is, wait for it, Leering Onlooker, mostly because this is a card that does stuff in your graveyard, so uh, always on the lookout for shenanigans like that. It's a vampire, 2 mana, 1/3 flyer, but you can get creatures by exiling it from the graveyard. Might be good in a token deck or a vampire deck, and it is a uncommon, so nothing that you can't obtain. All right. Next is Treacherous Greed. Speaking of black-white token decks, which have been a thing in many formats throughout Magic history, we have this card that says, put me in a token deck, and then you get lots of value. Um, so sacrifice a creature is the catch for this 3 mana instant, and then you draw 3 cards, and your opponent loses 3 life, and you gain 3 life. That seems really good for you once that happens. All right. Next we have Undergrowth Recon, once I get that on the screen here. So there's a bunch of new cards that sort of have an effect of putting lands from your graveyard onto the battlefield tapped. Undergrowth Recon does that most consistently as an enchantment for 3, double green 1. At the beginning of your upkeep, return target land card from the graveyard to the battlefield. It is tapped, so that makes it fair. I foresee that this could be used for shenanigans with wasteland type effects, or just getting lands back on the battlefield like a fetch land. So yeah. Speaking of, what is next? I don't remember. Let's see. Yes, we have Krenko, Baron of Tin Street. I believe other people have mentioned that this card is kind of busted, so I won't go too much into detail on this card, but it's basically a card that goes in a Kildoltha red deck, or a deck that combos out. But I believe a very low to the ground, gleeful demolition Kildoltha Rebirth deck might like this card, and I happen to like those decks. All right. Next, we have Connecting the Dots. So we have a 2 mana enchantment, and then whenever a creature you control attacks, you exile the top card of your library face down. Then you can discard your hand, sacrifice, connect the dots, and put those exiled cards into your hand. So it's basically this Bomat Courier, but in enchantment form for all of your creatures. I already mentioned the Kildoltha Red strategy of low to the ground goblins, so this can be really nutty in that type of deck, and I happen to have those decks. So I foresee myself trying this card, or any deck that's low to the ground and puts a lot of creatures into play really fast. Hopefully it doesn't get destroyed before you pop it and get a ridiculous amount of cards. All right. And then we have this funny card, the Aftermath Analyst. We have a 1/3 creature that mills you for 3, and the effect on this uncommon creature used to be on a rare sorcery. So they staple it to a creature, and then you get all your land cards from the battlefield tapped, and it also fills your graveyard too. So I don't understand why this is a uncommon, probably because that effect hasn't done anything in Magic history. But I feel like I'm going to be putting this card in a lot of my decks. Perhaps one that mills yourself in Pioneer. Maybe Sultai Squirmies. Subtle hint to watch the video. All right. And next we have Pick Your Poison. I'm super excited for this common because it's a 1 mana do something, and it has a lot of somethings it can do. So you can have your opponent sacrifice an artifact, an enchantment, or a creature with flying. And I will probably be putting this in my sideboard for a lot of green decks in a lot of formats. Because one mana do something on top of, you can also do other things, since one mana is not a whole lot of mana to do things with. Basically, you have leftovers to do more things and win. Alright, we have Anzrag, the Quake Mole. This card is ridiculous. 4 mana for an 8/4, but wait, there's more. When it becomes blocked, you get to untap each creature you control and get an additional combat phase after this. And I believe there's cards that give it trample in standard as well. You can also pay a lot of money to make it blocked this combat if able. Like, I feel like this card is the red-green shield red. If you do not have an answer for this card, you are dead in 2 turns. Alright, and then the last card is Yaris, Roar of the Old Gods. So this is basically a legendary 4/4, gives all your creatures you control haste, and whenever one or more face-down creatures you control deals combat damage to a player, it draws you cards, so always good to draw cards. And then whenever a face-down creature you control dies, return it to the battlefield face down under its owner's control. If it's a permanent card, then turn it face up. So you may not know this, but I have success with a morph deck in standard in the past. So this makes me want to dust off all those morph cards and manifest cards and all the new cards that have the new face down effects and run them in something new.